it starts really young, really young. It starts with children, and not everyone behaves this way. But in my neighborhood, talking about shame, we had a neighbor and their little girls were playing outside. I think they were between the ages of 7 and 9, and they had tank tops on. We live in Utah. It is hot, hot, hot here in the summer. It gets up to 106, 110. So these little girls were playing, and they had their tank tops on, and just playing kickball or whatever out in the park in front of our house. And one of the other little girls that they were playing with, who was a member of the church, ran up to them and said, "You are not properly modest. You need to cover up your shoulders. That's improper, and you need to cover up." These are 9, 7, 8, 9-year-old girls. She shamed her, and she learned that. That was a learned behavior.
Absolutely.
No one said that to me growing up. That is something that's learned. That is something that the church put on her, and it is, again, one of those control tactics. And that little girl has already learned when someone steps out of line, when they're not in line with what the church teaches, you shame them, you make them feel bad, and you pull them back in.
Welcome to She Became Visible. Thanks for joining me today. I wanted to give you a heads up to my two guests. I'm going to be interviewing Erika and Kate today. Many of you may be familiar with Kate if you are on TikTok before it was almost banned, but not banned and brought back. And I'm going to talk to her about that. But that's how I was introduced to Kate. So I know a little bit more about her than I know about Erika, but the two of them have gotten together and they have started a podcast called Two NoMos. Meet in a bar. I'll have to clarify it with them to make sure that's the full name of their podcast. But it's really great. And you know why it's great? Because it's two women sitting together and talking. And that's what we love to do. And that's what the women who leave the Mormon church, that's what they miss. It's two things. It's either that's what they miss or that's why they stay, is that connection with other women that women need so badly. And I remember even before I left the church, when I would hear women say, "Oh, my husband's my best friend. And, he and I just do everything together." And I thought, there's something wrong there. There's something wrong with that marriage because women need other women. And that's what Kate and Erika have brought to the podcast world. So let me bring them on and let me have have them introduce themselves to you. And we are going to get She Became Visible going. So here they are. Hello.
Hi, Rene. How are you?
I'm so good. So
Good.
Erika, it is such a pleasure to meet you. And
So nice to meet you.
thank you. And as I mentioned, Kate, I was a little bit more familiar with your story. Are you still on TikTok or have you just?
I am, yeah. So I
Okay.
go by Midlife Exmo Mama once upon a time, but that was a Midlife Exmo mouthful. So we
Okay.
shorten it. So I'm still there.
You're still there. Okay. Did you find that after TikTok went down and then came back up again, that your feed isn't the same, that you're getting different feed? Because I've lost a lot of people that just would pop up automatically. Now I'm getting more of a Facebook type recommendations where a lot of things are being recommended. And I'm like, who are these people? Go away, go away, go away. I haven't seen any of your stuff, so I will go back and find you again. So,
Thank you.
yeah, and I want you to catch us up on your story. And then Erika, I love the story that when you guys did your first one, and you talked about being a nevermo. You're not a Mormon. You've never been a Mormon, but unfortunately, you live in Mormon land.
Very unfortunately.
And
So I moved to Utah about 4 years ago. My husband got a job here, and the state is beautiful. It's a wonderful, gorgeous place. The culture, it is really, really difficult, challenging for someone who isn't used to it. And I've actually just started talking on my own about that. And as I'm talking about it, I hear from other people that's just validating. Like, you are not crazy. It's a really insane place to live.
Yeah.
If you aren't part of the dominant culture, because you don't understand what's happening ever. It's just confusing.
And you know what? Isn't it weird? Because I was telling my husband, when you go back to New York, we've been back in New York during one of the Jewish holidays. Can't remember which one it was, but we've got the palm leaves and the whole thing. It's the one that is in October. And there were a lot of stores that were closed because it was a Jewish holiday. There were people with palm leaves in Times Square, and you can go into the Diamond District, very high Hasidic Jewish population there. Well, we've been to Williamsburg. We've done the Statue of Liberty tour where there were a lot of Hasidic Jews on the boat. And it's definitely present. It's very present in New York, but you don't go into a grocery store and say, I'm sorry, we don't sell pork,
Right.
Or
or the clothing. Well, I'm sorry, we don't sell things without sleeves, you know,
Yeah.
because of the Jewish prominence there.
Right.
And I said, honestly, even if you go to Texas or Oklahoma, where there's maybe a strong Baptist evangelical
Mhm.
presence, it still doesn't restrict your Sunday shopping, your clothing, your food
Yeah.
purchases, the radio you're listening to, the television anchor people aren't in full, burqas. It's the weirdest thing to go to Utah, where it literally is a theocracy and the entire state is Mormon. And I know that they're saying that, now there are more ex-Mormons or no Mormons than Mormons in the state, but the
Mhm.
culture is predominant and the laws and the restrictions are LDS based. So
Yeah.
yeah, you were talking, and I'll let you guys talk. But going into the bar, you'll have to talk about the alcohol laws and how those work. So you go there, your husband gets a job. Is he working with a lot of LDS people?
No, so he's pretty lucky. He is a geologist and he is working for Kennecott, which is a mining company here.
Rio Tinto,
Okay.
right?
Rio Tinto, yeah.
Mhm.
There's he knows some Mormon people, some not Mormon people. We live in a place called Daybreak, which is
Yeah.
it's very diverse. There's lots
Yeah.
of different types of people here. I happened to be working in Mormon Central. So I won't say specifically where I was working, but I was working in
For
Utah
your
Valley.
safety. For your safety.
I just don't want to
Yeah.
Mhm.
divulge that. But
Yeah.
I will say it was in Provo, Orem area, Utah
Woo.
Valley. Super high concentration of Mormons. I think it's about 72%, but my office was probably anywhere between 85 to 95% Mormon. And I will also say I have moved around a lot. I'm from the East Coast. I lived in California for 10 years, Alaska for 5 years. I lived in Ecuador for a year. So I'm used to being exposed to different cultures,
Yeah.
different religions, different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Nothing is like this. I love meeting new people, finding new ways of doing things, hearing things that don't jive with who I am necessarily.
Yeah.
This is not that. It is a cult. Living in a cult is different than experiencing a different culture. And I will say, from my perspective and this perspective of a lot of other ex-Mormons and never Mormons, all of us never Mormons perceive it as a cult. It
Yeah.
feels like a cult if you aren't in
Yeah.
it. Whereas Judaism doesn't feel like a cult. It feels like a different religion
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you're not Jewish, But this is it doesn't feel like a different culture. It feels like a cult.
I love that you did that analogy because you're right. I mean, we lived in Japan. There were women in kimonos on the train. The
Mhm,
food is different. The smell is different because of the food and everything else.
mhm.
But you don't get a feeling of, like you say, of judgment or looks, or it's just a weird, it's almost undescribable, the difference in just a cultural difference and this weird mindset that is so different, that's so complicated. It's very complicated. And like you
Yeah,
say, I'm shopping in Japan. I walk into the beautiful stores. They have the beautiful women in their uniforms that greet you when you walk in. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful cultural thing. But when I go into anthropology at the mall, and I'm in the dressing room and I'm listening to these ladies talking about their Relief Society function that's going on. And don't I know you? You know what ward are you in? Because my parents are in that ward. Do you know my parents?
mhm.
No, they moved from that ward to the other ward. Oh, yes, my dad's a stake president. And I'm sitting in this dressing room going, where am I? What? Or you go into the Costco in Utah and they have
Mhm.
food storage, Book of Mormon, come follow me, you know.
Jesus paintings.
Yeah,
That literally, I walked into one and I had seen them before, so I knew they were there, but they come out at certain times of year. And every time, now that I've seen them 2 or 3 times circulating around when they come through, they're so imposing. There's a huge display of the ugliest, tackiest paintings you've ever seen. White Jesus
yeah,
in
it's them.
in his garb, standing there on a sand dune or whatever, and just really ugly. And my mouth just drops open when
Yeah,
I see them, even though I've seen them before. It's so imposing and
yeah.
odd. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Mhm.
know. My mother has one of those pictures. I think it's Liz Lemon, one of Liz Lemon's pictures, where you've got dental veneer Jesus got this big, huge, white smile with these white teeth, very, and I'm
Because
like,
that happened
oh,
2,000 years ago.
yeah, they had great teeth back then.
Yeah, they
And
did.
she's like, oh, you've got Sven Jesus, Mom. Maybe, Sven is handsome, I must say, but I don't know. Was he Hebrew? I don't know.
I don't
So,
think so.
Right.
yeah, that's what people are talking about. Now, talk about, because you guys do your podcast most of the time from a bar. What's the alcohol rule there? I remember going into the grocery store. Kate, I don't know how you've done it. I've tried alcohol. My husband and I go out. He's still a member. He's a true believing member, but he's, very nuanced and stuck, basically. He's like, what am I going to do with her? I can't control her, And so I've decided that when we go out on Saturday night, I'm going to try a drink. So I've tried a Cosmo. My favorite drink is a White Russian. Anything with cream in it is pretty much my favorite drink.
The sweet. The sweet. I need the sugar is what I've learned.
Yeah. And so what I've discovered though, is after 3 sips, and this includes White Claw, which is nothing, I'm a little dizzy. I'm a little bit lightheaded. I'm not happy. So I don't know where this joy and fun comes from, where people get drunk and they go out and they have a great time. I'm just a little bit like, oh, wow, I think I need to lay down. And that's like 3 drinks of a White Claw. And so I'm kind of like, I don't think this is worth it. It's not working. I'm too old to start. My poor body's like, what are you doing? You have never done this before, So I haven't found the joy of the alcohol yet. So I remember going into, my kids were coming. And so I thought, well, I'll go buy a bottle of wine or something for the kids. And I go into Harmon's and I'm like, where's the wine aisle? They have a wine aisle at AJ's here in Arizona. You don't have a wine aisle? They're like, no. And I'm like,
No.
oh my gosh. Tell the people what the Utah alcohol laws are.
Our podcast is called an XMO and a Nevermo walk into a bar, and we have filmed.
And we're Two NoMos.
Oh,
so we are Two NoMos. We have kind of, that's our like shortened name. We're Two NoMos.
Unlike the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that wants to make their name more difficult for people, we try to shorten it so people don't have to say, oh, next one, walk into a bar. But
yeah,
call us Two NoMos for short. But I'm the XMO, Erika's the Nevermo, and our story, if we could just add that real quick.
Yes, please do.
We met each other about 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that. I was married and still true blue believing Mormon with a rod way up my ass. And we met at this workplace where my ex-husband, she was actually boss to my ex-husband. And so when we met, I didn't like her because number one, like my husband had problems with her. And number two, she was like a dirty heathen. Like she was showing her porn shoulders, and who does that? Yeah. So either my job as a Mormon was either to convert her or to stay away from her. And I was like, I don't see this woman converting. I'm staying away.
She's right.
So I was like, she was the dirty heathen and I was the, what would you say? A prude.
She was a prude. Yeah.
I was a total prude.
I thought she was absolutely a prude. We didn't like each other. I knew that her husband didn't like me. So when I met her, I was like, oh, she probably hates me. The first thing I had heard about her when I got to Utah, and this also speaks to sort of the like cultiness of it, we were doing a play called Heidi Chronicles, and there were a few F-bombs in it. College kids were putting it on. It's PG-13 maybe, but it did have some F-bombs.
Oh, it was a lot of F-bombs. Just saying. There were a fucking lot of F-bombs. Can I say that? Sorry, Rene.
I don't know. I haven't figured that where my thing is. I'm always like, can kids watch this? Sure. So okay, you get one. I think maybe you get one. Yeah.
Okay, we'll tone it down for that.
Yeah.
But there were some F-bombs in this play, and her husband came in. We had to have this whole meeting about it. He said, we really need a content warning on this show for college students because there are F-bombs. And he said, there are people walking out in protest. And I know because my wife was one of them. And I was like, what? Like, so we had to put up a whole content warning about it. That was the first thing that I knew about Kate. And I was like, well, I'm not going to like this woman. Like, I didn't think that I would like her. And we didn't like each other. We met after a show, and there was a moment in this show, a different show, where a woman did like a mini sort of striptease. She did like a bikini granny panties, but she did a little gyration, and Kate was sitting in front of me, and I saw her leap on a child, which I later found out was her niece, to protect her from this filth.
I saw her leap on a child. I love that.
And I was sitting behind her and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a wild. And then after we met in the lobby and her husband said, this is my wife Kate, and we were like, hi.
You have to be
And
cordial, right?
yeah.
Mm.
He left. He ended up getting a job he left. I'll just say that. He ended up
Yeah.
getting a job somewhere else. And I ran into a mutual acquaintance and she said, Kate and her ex-husband are divorced. She started a TikTok. She left the church. I was like, Kate
Yeah.
left the church. You
Uptown
don't
Kate.
understand. Yeah, where I was working, no one left the church. Like, as my understanding was, Mormons don't leave. I
Yeah.
didn't ever meet anyone who left. Like, the idea that someone could find it to turn that switch and see their way out, to me was like, whoa. So I checked out her TikTok because our mutual acquaintance was like, it's really interesting. You should check it out. I wasn't even really on TikTok. I think I got TikTok.
Stalk me.
Stalker.
Okay.
And I was watching these videos and I was like, holy moly. And she was just like breaking stuff down. And
Yeah.
it was like hearing someone speak a new language, because
Oh,
I knew the Mormons that I interacted with, they would just shut down at a certain point. I knew there were things that they just couldn't be reached about. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you just shut it down. It doesn't make sense. You just turn it off. You shut down. So like see her deconstructing on TikTok to me was fascinating. So I reached out to her.
About like a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was like a year, almost exactly, in February. I hope I'm not being too creepy. I met you once, and I want to just offer you some love and support. She'd mentioned some of her friends had ostracized her after leaving the church, and I was like, that sucks. If you want to go get a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, let me know. And we did.
And we hit it off immediately. Like it was amazing that
Yeah.
we were meant to be friends.
Yeah.
But we had this religion that just divided
Yes.
us. And
Yes.
so once that barrier was taken, like we could see each other for who we are, and we became super good friends super fast.
She's my best friend in Utah.
Yeah, and I'm over at this woman's house probably more than I am at my own, you know. And I think this is it's been phenomenal to do this. And so we started this podcast because we find our conversations fascinating and we want other people to join us, because we're able to share not just 2 but 3 perspectives, because we have like my perspective as the ex-Mormon and Erika's as a never Mormon, which a lot of my audience finds fascinating. They're like, I've always wondered what a never Mormon in Utah thought. They love her content. And then I also have the perspective of a Mormon, because I remember what it's like. I was in it for 45 years of my life. It was my whole world. So what we do is we share our conversations in this podcast, typically at a bar. We just break down a lot of the hypocrisy, a lot of the contradictions, a lot of the judgment and the shame, and we're not anti-Mormon people. We're not. I mean, a lot of my dear friends are still members of the church. People that I love dearly are still members of the church, but we both view the organization, and I know you've talked to this too, is it's a patriarchal order. It is very much about control, and they use cult tactics to keep people in line, to shut down critical thinking. Don't choose for yourself. Don't trust yourself. Trust the man behind the curtain, because he's the only one who has the right answers.
And most importantly, pay tithing.
Oh, and pay tithing. Yes. That's Erika's big thing,
it's
right?
so funny because my husband is still a member of the church. He's an extrovert, loves people. You know, I have so many videos of him on the airplane. What we do is we usually fly Southwest. So we get on, he takes an aisle seat, I take an aisle seat. That way neither one of us has to crawl over people to go to the bathroom. And so I put my earplugs in and get a podcast going on an audiobook or something like that. And I look over and he's chatting away. And by the time we land 2 hours later, he knows where this guy went to school. He knows how many kids he has, and I always say to him, why do you care? You're never going to see this guy again, but he just loves people. So he has gone to Exmo Thrive type things with me. He just sits there and listens to the stuff and it doesn't bother him. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to go to the Faith Matters Restore conference with you. That's only fair. They project themselves as being nuanced, progressive thinking, where they'll get on stage and they'll, Patrick Murphy, I think his name is Patrick. He's written a book about polygamy. He's come out on Mormon stories and said he hates polygamy. He doesn't think it was a revelation. He thinks it was a sin, but that doesn't deter his faith or anything like that, or it doesn't make him think that Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet. He just thinks he was just a little fallible one day in the barn. And so, Yeah. So, and he and my husband will run immediately to Deseret Book and get one of Patrick's books and read them. And Steve Young was there and he gave a talk because he had a book, and his book was all about not treating prayer like vending machines. We shouldn't treat prayer like, if I give you this, will you give me that? And I'm like, well, that's nice from the football player, but I've never heard the prophet. In fact, the prophet is like, if you don't obey your covenants and if you're not obedient,
Mhm.
God's grace is not just given out. You have to earn. That's what the prophet says. I don't care what the football player says, you know. The biggest bee in my bonnet is there is a feminist that is really big in stressing Mother in Heaven. And she curates art exhibits. She has written books about teaching our kids about Mother in Heaven. I actually had her on my podcast after the thing, and I said, "How do you get away with this?" I said, "You're standing on stage with Fiona Givens, who was asked very nicely to step down from the Maxwell Institute because she was talking about Mother in Heaven. And then you've got Maxine Hanks that was excommunicated because she gave a fireside on Mother in Heaven. And you're standing on a stage with 4,000 Mormons and men who are very prominent in the Mormon world talking about Mother in Heaven." And I said, "How do you get away with that?" And she's like, "Well, you know, that's just the way I feel." And I said, "What about when Brother Renland gave a talk in conference and said, 'We are not to talk about Mother in Heaven. Stop it.'" And she said, "No, no, no, no." She said, "Let me tell you how that worked." She said, "When he gave that talk, I was in India and there were women there that had never heard of Mother in Heaven. They didn't know that the Mormon church believed that we had a Mother in Heaven. Because of Brother Renland giving that talk, they now know of Mother in Heaven." I'm like, wow, that was a Scrabble game.
But
That
we're not allowed to pray to her. We're not allowed to
no,
talk to her. We're not
yeah,
allowed to have any relationship with her. But
yeah.
she's there, too
But this
sacred.
but this lady, because it's the church has progressed and they've seen the damage that they did by excommunicated Maxine, demoting Fiona. They've seen the damage, so now they're just gonna go quiet. They're not gonna say anything, and they're gonna let this lady get away with what she's doing. That's the hypocrisy that you're talking about, is where they'll and I noticed in the one I just showed in the beginning, Erica, where you were talking about shame, and this is not that long ago. That one that was, maybe a year ago?
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
girls outside.
Yeah,
This is
the
since I moved here, so yeah, that would probably have been about a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
And
but your
and
post that you made where you talked about it, that was just a few months ago, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we just put that up recently. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we just
yeah,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
so, you know, you, a non-member, never been a member, you recognized that this little girl was being shamed by another little girl because of the indoctrination, and now we have new garments that allow
Yes.
you to have your shoulders.
Which makes me so mad because the way I show the world, like this last summer was my first full summer out of the church, and I made a point to wear tank top,
Yeah,
revealing my shoulders. I'm like, I do not belong, and I will show you. And now the members can do it.
yeah.
That makes me mad. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna
You're
have
gonna
to
have
get
to
like a face tattoo or something to show
walk
that I
around
can
naked.
walk around naked.
No, you know, it's funny. I'm the same way. There's just this rebellious spirit, you know, in some of us. And I know one of my daughters, she is a true believing Mormon and a wonderful, fabulous mother, and but also very aware, very progressive. And when she left, or we were living in Oregon, and she went out to Utah to go to school, first thing she did was get her eyebrow pierced because she
Ah,
just that was this. See, you've got to signal. There's
mhm,
signals in the church,
right.
and you're either a CTR ring, your
Mhm,
garments,
mhm.
piercings, tattoos, your choice of clothing. If you've got on, you know, capri pants and it's 107 degrees outside and a tunic top, then it's like, oh, you're Mormon. I get it. Everyone signals. So yeah, you leave the church and your first thing is, I'm checking
Yeah.
it. You know, that's your first signal. You know?
And
And
for
I'm telling
us,
you,
we
yeah,
use that as never Mormons now here, all of us in Utah, we use those as litmus tests. So it's tricky
yeah,
for us now too. So like
yes,
when I see somebody I know and we'll gauge like, oh, like how am I going to interact with this person?
yeah,
And I say, hey, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee? Can I drop an F bomb in front of them?
yeah,
Can I invite them over to our house for a barbecue with beer? Like,
yeah.
and we have to know all these things. So and also, I'll say this is kind of, I don't know if I can use this word. Maybe it's unkind. So I'll just say that instead. A lot of us will play like a little game, which is like, are they Mormon? So we'll be in a restaurant and we'll try, we'll
I didn't know that about you.
Like Steve
Play
Carell in
that game
Game of
together.
Three. Yeah,
we're
yeah,
almost always right. And you can
yeah,
tell by what people order for their drinks. But when they sit down and they come in my husband and I will play that. We'll look at them, you know, of course, if they have a shoulder strap, we're like, okay, that they're not Mormon.
Yeah.
Anything that's a tattoo, belly ring, or, you know, a nose ring, anything that like gives it away, we'll know right away. Sometimes it's a little bit trickier to tell, but then when the drinks come, if everyone gets a round of Diet Cokes instead of like a couple of cocktails, then we'll know for sure, and we'll be like, yep, we were right.
Yeah,
But
now we know where this conversation is going to go tonight. Yeah, that's funny. But you know, and it's so true because when we took my daughter out to college, we were looking for housing for her, and so we were looking to rent a room, and we would go into these homes that had a room to rent, and there'd be just a random lonely little bottle of Corona sitting on the countertop, and I'm like, okay, we got it. You're not a member. You want us to know that if we decide to rent this room from you, that there will be drinking here. We got the signal that you sent out. I mean, where on earth, you know, like you say, even if you go down to Oklahoma or anywhere where the Southern Baptist church is prevalent, do you walk around and go, oh, you're Southern Baptist? Oh, you must be Methodist. No, no, you're Presbyterian. I can tell.
yeah,
You know,
Right.
you can't do
and no, and I will say, I also like, I really want people to know that I'm not like, I never want people to think that I don't have any tattoos yet. I just have my ears
We're
pierced.
gonna do it. We're gonna do a tattoo episode.
We're gonna do a tattoo episode where we both get tattoos.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to think I'm Mormon. Like that, it would be.
I would never think you were Mormon,
No.
Erika, ever.
No, but the sad thing is when they, like you say, just like with the temple garments, and then when they changed the Strength of Youth pamphlet for the kids, and now
Mhm.
Mormons are getting tattoos, and you're like, and you're also shopping at Costco on Sunday. I cannot
Yes.
understand what's happening here. I don't know where
No.
I'm at, you know?
When we're annoyed about the Sunday thing too, because even when we just got here 4 years ago, that was the one thing I was like, there's a lot of drawbacks to living
Yes.
here, the alcohol
Yeah.
thing, and we should talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah.
But one of the bigger drawbacks too is on Saturday, if you go to Costco, it is a madhouse. It is insane because half of the people that might be shopping on Sunday are there on Saturday. And then on Sunday, you could go in and literally like dance around Costco. You had the whole place to yourself. You could sing,
Yeah.
you could put on a musical. It was, and
Yeah.
I did. Not really, but I would sing in there and just dance around. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Now it's kind of the worst of both worlds because Saturdays is still a madhouse because there are a bunch of Mormons who won't go shopping
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Sundays.
Yeah.
But there are some who will. So now it's kind of packed on Sunday.
And they
too.
show up in their like suit and tie, and they're
Yes.
dressed
Yes.
like they just came
They're
from
not
church.
even ashamed. They don't even try to hide it. It's like, you're at Harmon's. You just got out of church. You're in a
Right.
Be
full line.
ashamed of yourself. I'm going to
That's
say that
right.
next time.
Doggone it. That's so funny. That's so
They
funny.
get enough shame in
Yeah.
the church. They don't need our
Yeah.
shame too.
No, and you know, and the thing is, like you said, it's also really pleasant place to live. I mean, the people are so nice, and the customer service is just like you're back in 1960. You're like,
Mhm.
thank you for asking if there's anything they can do. Thank you for lifting your eyes and walking to the side, you know, down the aisle. I mean, they are very kind. It's a nice
Mhm.
place to do business. There's a lot of really good things about
Yeah.
it. The missionary training has trained these people with some social skills that they might not get in the outside world. And so there's really some good things. And it is a fabulous, you know, outdoor, beautiful place to live. I mean, that's why all these non-Mormons are moving there because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, so there are some good things about it, but I do know it's also the highest fraud, you know, in the whole entire United States. You know, and I have a true believing mother who would say things like, I remember going over to her apartment and she's like, "Oh, Rene, this is a plumber. This is plumber Joe. He's a member of the church." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Mom."
That was every conversation with my
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
growing up, like with this very, very orthodox. I mean, we grew up in Provo for
Oh
crying out
dear.
loud.
Yeah, that's bad.
And
Yeah.
my dad was like institute teacher,
Oh
bishop, stake
dear.
president, all of the things. And like
Yeah.
anytime we would talk about
Yeah.
anyone, didn't matter if they were like neighbor down the street, someone, that was always the qualifier.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, and they're a member of the church, or
Yeah.
they're not a member of the church, but they're still a good person, you
Yeah.
know?
And we know that too. Like I could feel that at work, like people knowing that I was not Mormon and sort of putting that on me or having like certain expectations. And one of the things, and I said this in one of our episodes, that was weird to me, and this what you're saying right now lets me know they probably did think about it to some extent. One
Yeah.
of the weirdest things for me was the garments, as I just call them magical underwear.
Yeah.
It was weird. I'd occasionally look around the room and be like, Everyone else in this room got up and they put their magical underwear on, and I didn't. And they know I didn't. Like,
Yeah.
I know this weird thing about all these people that they all had this little ritual that morning, and they know that I didn't participate in that. So it's weird to be on the other side too and know that, feel the judgment, I guess,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, and then the feeling, did you ever feel as though you were a project? Like, could you tell that people were like, let's be nice to her? So, like you were saying, Kate, maybe I can convert her. Maybe I should be her friend.
Yes and no. But so where I was working, no, that was one thing I would say, except for your husband once tried to
Really?
get me to read the Book of Mormon.
Oh.
We were having a
Um,
conversation. He was like, you should read the Book of Mormon. I was like, that's not appropriate.
oh,
So
Doesn't surprise me.
yeah.
for the most part at work, no. I think everyone pretty much knew I was very rooted in not doing that. But
Oh,
what's interesting to me is when I have conversations, particularly with people who maybe don't know me or aren't in a professional situation or around our podcast, people get
right.
messages sometimes or we'll start commenting on different links. But when people comment to me, then sometimes I will feel, you can see what they're doing and it feels really gross. It's like a salesman, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to say a thing and let me
Mhm.
understand this, let me understand. Well, and then they jump in and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is, and I try to say back, like, this is your program. And one of them recently was like, I'm not trying to get you to, no, I don't, why would I do that? I don't want you to do that. But boom, but you should, boom, you should try this, find the Lord. And it was like, boom, 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 right after that. And it feels like really icky. And you know, when you have that friend who is in an MLM and they're like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes. You get this
like,
weird email. Hi, we haven't talked for a while, but what mascara do you use? I'm like,
what?
that was subtle. You know,
Yeah, or they say something totally like bizarre, like, would you like to be making $10,000 a month?
yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? And they're like, no, you don't then. And you're like, what conversation are we having? Like,
Yeah.
it's just sort of, it's bananas. But I will say in the professional environment, that didn't really happen. Everywhere else,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And one more thing I'll add to that, I actually love when the missionaries come to our house. I
Oh,
grill them. Have you seen Heretic?
yes.
So it's not
Yeah.
quite that bad.
Yeah. You're
They're
not
like,
locked in
Don't
the
like
basement.
affect them.
That's good to know that it's not quite that bad.
not quite, but I do love to kind of grill them and say, like, in speaking of like the patriarchy, a lot of times, mostly it's boys that come here, and I'll say to them, why would I, as a woman, ever join your church? I believe that women are capable of holding positions of leadership, and your organization does not. Why would I ever join an organization like that? And they're like,
I know.
oh,
I'm
but
18. I don't know. My mom. Yeah.
I'll call my mom.
Yeah.
No, but you can have a leadership position, but you have to
Yeah.
talk like this when you are leading.
Yeah. If your husband is rich enough and well known and connected somehow with some nepotism in Utah, you can have a position of authority. That's it.
maybe in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
auxiliary, right? Or
Yeah.
the Relief Society or
Mhm.
over the
Yeah,
children's
because
board.
it's a
Look at you
it's
learning
a
all
high
this
position.
vocabulary. I'm so proud
Yeah,
of you.
I got all the lingo down. Yeah, it's a position of prominence, but not authority. But
Yes.
yeah. So Kate, how much are you sharing on you 2? Do you go into your divorce as much as you did on your TikTok?
Not as much. I
Okay.
mean, particularly because this person is common, and we don't want everyone to put two and two together. I've
Okay.
changed my last name too. I don't want anybody to. I don't want to publicly shame this
Oh, that's
individual.
so good. Yeah, yeah,
Though I will identify some things that were really hurtful,
yeah.
and I can see a lot of what happened was because of the programming of the church,
Well, so
where the
I was gonna say, I don't remember from your TikToks, did you leave the church after the divorce, or was your leaving the church have anything to do with the divorce?
Yes, it was about the same time. I left the church. He was out of state getting training for another job,
Oh, yes,
and
yeah.
I had stayed home to make sure the house sold. I was doing grad school, one thing and another. While he was away, that's when my proverbial shelf broke.
I see.
I
Okay.
finally realized, and I understood why I was being treated the way I was,
Oh,
and just because it was very patriarchal. He's like, "I took a job. I'm the patriarch of the family. We're moving," and I'm like,
yeah,
"I didn't get that revelation. What do you
yeah,
mean?" And he put me in a really hard position
yeah,
where I had to choose between him and my only child,
yeah.
and thinking like, oh, God would want me to do this because God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. That's just what you do in the church. But it
Yeah.
felt so yucky and so wrong. So
Yeah.
I left the church, and I still remember the day. It was July 23rd, 2023 was the day
Uh,
my shelf just broke. I called him and said, hey, I don't believe this is true. And he said, well, I still do. Do you think we could make a mixed faith marriage work? And I said, no, I don't. Like,
oh,
you have to have a solid foundation, and we don't.
yeah.
And so it was at the time that I left the church, we decided to divorce. And
Okay. So it wasn't
that's kind of
necessarily the cause. It wasn't like he said, I can't be married to you if you're not a member of the church, but there was other things going on that was like, this
lots,
is
and,
the,
and that's the thing that I don't want to go into. I don't want to
yeah.
go into other
And
things.
that's the personal part that people, because the
Yeah.
saddest part is when women are sideswiped because they don't know that there's anything, they don't think there's anything else going on in their marriage that would cause, a separation. And then they leave the church and then their husband goes, oh yeah, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And they're like, what, wait, what? But I thought we loved each other. We have 4 kids. What's going on? And
Right.
you're like, no, the bishop told me I need to find someone that I can be married to in the temple or whatever, silly things like that.
Right.
So
Right.
sometimes you hear that. Yeah.
And the way I viewed it, because we did have a lot of issues that I'm
Yeah.
not going to go into, but I felt like it was my job as the wife to white knuckle my way to the celestial kingdom.
Well,
Just
yeah.
even though these things are hard and I'm not happy, or I had thought that since I had been divorced once before, that was just God giving me that mulligan. Like, you're
Mm.
entitled to have like one messed up marriage, but don't you dare
Yes.
mess up the second one. So
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
incredible amount of shame and felt like I had to stay in this marriage, and
Yes.
and it was my responsibility to make this marriage work
Yeah.
and to make him happy,
Yeah.
because that's just what women do, and you
Yeah.
don't expect anything in return because that's selfish.
One of the other things that you had said to me, and I think this is okay, because I think you said it on the podcast, was because the way the Mormon church functions, when you're dating, there's a fast track. You got to get married because you cannot be intimate if you aren't married.
Right.
So that was also one of the reasons that happened so quickly, is that she's in any other situation, you might not have ended up married to this person,
Right.
but because the church and the bishop, if I can say this,
Two bishops,
yeah,
yeah.
or you can tell it. It's your
Oh yeah.
story.
So when we were dating, the second, and I met him like right after my first divorce, like within a month,
Oh,
and I was vulnerable and a little horny, not gonna lie, just in that situation where I felt we were dating, and we both knew we were going too fast. Like, we
oh,
knew we were going too fast, and we went to both of our bishops because we were not in the same ward, and we would meet with the bishop and saying like, what do we do? Like, we're really attracted to each other. We're planning on getting married like in July of next year. Oh no, you got to speed it up. Like, you
yeah.
need to get married now.
Yeah.
So he's telling, like, these bishops that are maybe like 10, 20 years older than us
Yeah.
are telling us as grown adults.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in my 30s, he was in his 40s, telling us to get married. So we bumped up our marriage 6 months early,
Yeah.
so we could get married, because we were told by leaderships of our leadership in the church that we had to, or
Yeah.
we would be going to hell.
Well, and it, goes back to Spencer Kimball and Gordon. I love Gordon B. Hinckley. He was the
Yeah.
prominent prophet when I was a member, and he married us actually in the Salt Lake Temple. And I
Wow.
still look at him as a very kind, obedient person who did what he was told and thought he was doing the right stuff. I give him a lot of grace. But they both had lectures and talks about, there's no reason why two people can't get along if you're both
Mhm.
members of the church and you both follow all the commandments and you both go to the temple weekly. If you can't get along, then somebody's being selfish. And
Right.
other than that, so why not get married after you meet somebody for 3 months? Because you're both members of the church. And if you both
Right.
work hard and go to the temple, that's what all the bishops were told and our parents were told. And
Well,
yeah,
and it wasn't even, not even like both of the people, because do you remember the triangle? Do you remember
yeah,
that? Like,
yeah,
God's at the head, and then here's the husband, here's the wife. And I remember being taught, like, because there are three people in a marriage.
yeah,
Sounds really creepy. Yeah, look at
yeah,
Erica.
yeah,
But like the
Or
three,
10 in some places in Utah, 20, 30.
yeah,
but in this case, in this triangle with God, and I remember being told like any marriage can work as long as two people are making it work. And even if that's you're the one, and God is the second,
oh,
you'll
okay,
make
yeah,
that marriage work. And
yeah,
so that was me. I'm like, I'm gonna save this marriage because God and I are gonna save this marriage.
yeah.
Was the way I
Yeah.
thought.
It's funny because Erica, you're talking about how when you first met Kate and how you were doing a performance that was a little etchy in the Mormon world. One of the other things that I have a hard time with, and I don't know how there's a fine line between saying, look, I think everybody should be half naked, dropping F-bombs, and having sex on stage. Otherwise, it's not an adult performance. There's that extreme. And then there's everybody is fairy tales and dragons and, fairy wings. And it's like, but how do you describe the infantilizing of the adults in Utah? Because we were down in St. George and Tuacahn had Jersey Boys. We've seen Jersey Boys probably 3 times, New York, Portland, we love it. So we go and we're sitting there and it gets to the part where, Oh, What a Night is portrayed, the song, Oh, What a Night. And we all know what the story is because I've seen the broadcast in New York and whatnot. And I'm watching this performance and I'm like, what's happening? They're at a company Christmas party. The women are decorating the Christmas tree. The guy that's singing, Oh, What a Night, is sitting on a sofa, kind of like, and a girl comes and sits next to him. And he's like, Oh, what a night. On December 1963. Like he's just going to get his first kiss. And that's how they portrayed it. And I said,
Wow.
and I said to my husband, I will never go to a theater production in Utah ever, ever again. When you
Yeah.
can't do Jersey Boys, the real story of Jersey Boys, and if you can't portray it authentically, then don't put the play on. Then
Yeah.
then do Beauty and the Beast. We're good, And
It's a way.
so how did you do that? I mean, that couldn't have just been the only performance, right?
That's super interesting. And one of the things that was really frustrating to me working at this place. So it was a performing arts organization housed in a university. While I was there, the person who was in charge, the executive director, basically, who was booking the shows, was not Mormon. Actually,
Oh.
he was from out of state. He was more edgy, and he actually worked really hard to get sort of more edgy shows in. Definitely not, hair where everyone's running around the stage naked or anything.
Jesus Christ Superstar. We already know that's not good. Yeah.
But definitely stuff that wasn't just, Alice in Wonderland or whatever. Yeah. He left in my last year, and there was a new person that came on board who is Mormon, kind of a what maybe called Jack Mormon, but Mormon, and very, very wholesome. We did have a show booked that was rated R. It was part of a film series. She was very adamant about it. This is this is so crazy. So I was the marketing director for this, and she called me. I can't even she called me into her office and she said, I don't want you to do any marketing for this show. Pull it. Do not put it on our social media. Do not send an email except to anyone who went to a previous R-rated show or anything that was not R-rated, but anything that was a little bit more edgy here. Yeah. She said, we are never booking an R-rated film for our film series ever again. We're never doing content like this. And that was probably in the week or so, maybe before I made my exit. I was already thinking of leaving this organization. But to me, my jaw was always on the ground. And it's a way of disengaging with the world, of infantilizing adults. And one of those other things that was a weird separation for me, because I would come in and say, I saw this great movie, or I'm watching this series with my husband, The Great. It's about Catherine the Great. Has anyone seen it? And everyone would look at me like, no.
That's rated MA.
Yeah. It's really weird and disconcerting. And I'll say, we just did an episode called If Mormon Were a Color, It Would Be Beige. And we talked about specifically because this was a school of the arts. This is a performing arts organization. And art, some of it is angels and fairy wings and whatever, and beauty, and bowls of fruit, whatever. Some of it is art is meant to reflect all the vibrancy of life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the gritty
feelings.
And to be in a performing arts organization where people say, this little tiny echelon right here, this is the art that we'll engage with. None of this, nothing with swearing, nothing with any kind of intimacy, nothing that's dirty, nothing with violence, nothing. All this, we can't do it. We can do this. And here we are, a great performing arts organization. That was really hard for me. It sucked.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, please.
Several years before you came, because my ex was working for this organization, they brought a show called Next to Normal. Are you familiar with it at all?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar.
So we went and saw it, and it's a story about a woman with schizophrenia and bipolar, and it is about how this just ruined this family. And at the end, it's like, well, I guess we'll get by. We're next to normal. We're not normal, but we're somewhere close. And it's like this rock musical. It is so gritty and heart wrenching. Like anybody who went to see it was just sobbing,
Right.
because we all know people with mental illnesses
Yeah.
or experience them ourselves. When this show was performed, we went and saw it because they had like a PG-13 version of it. They had sanitized it for this one performance where they took out a bunch of the F bombs. I guess they had to get permission from the publishers to do this, but
Oh,
they took out
yeah.
the F bombs. They took out some of the sexual innuendo. They took out a lot of this. I saw this and I was like, this is a great musical. And then learned that they were going to do like the grittier original, like the what it should actually be. And
Right.
I went and I was like, I don't know that I want to see this, but I really enjoyed it. I really want to see it again. So I went and saw it with no censorship.
Right.
And they were going to take this because it's a college. They were going to take it to like the John F. Kennedy Center. Like it's a competition, national competition
Oh,
for
yeah.
arts. And they were going to take it there and they were going to take the uncensored version. And I remember thinking, I even said it out loud. I said, I hope that they lose. I said this because like they are not taking the right version. They're taking something so much greater because that's the way I had been programmed.
No one
Yes.
should win with filth.
No one should win with filth, even though I mean, right now we need to watch this because it is such powerful, powerful musical. And you missed a lot of it when they sanitized it.
I'm just like, oh my goodness, I could talk about all of this. And as I'm like, oh yeah, there was this and this and this.
Yeah.
Can I say two things really
Yeah.
quick around that? We had, before my time, but I learned about this later, we had a very, very, very famous singer. I won't say who it is because I don't want to give away too much information. Very famous singer. She came, she did a show, but for the headshot that we used for her, she's a famous, famous actress and singer.
Yeah.
She had a sequin dress on, cut, you can't really see, but cut pretty low. I
Yeah.
mean, she had some cleavage and she was laying on a bench, I think. So
Yeah.
it was, cleavage.
Yeah.
The guy who was the executive director at that time, he would tell me stories from time to time. And he said he got called into the principal's office for that. People were messaging him, this is filthy. You need to cover her up. Like just, and this is when I was new here. And I, like, again, all the time, I would walk around and be like, what is
Yeah.
going on? Like,
Yeah.
if you're not from here, it's
That's,
really,
yeah.
it is a mind, it's just really
Yeah.
difficult. And the other thing I'll say, this is outside of this organization. I'm getting my master's at Southern Utah University right now in communication. I had a pop culture class and we had, and I'm going to say it again, it's a graduate level class. It is a master's class. For pop culture, we had all of these different things that we had to watch from pop culture, different scenes from movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And we have assigned reading. The reading that they put into PDFs for us, anything that like highlighted something from pop culture with a swear was blacked out for adults.
No.
And in all of the videos we watched, when anyone said anything, I think maybe even crap was bleeped out. I mean,
No.
maybe
No,
probably
Mormons
not,
use
but-
crap a
okay.
lot.
So
Yeah.
maybe crap was in there. Maybe I'm exaggerating.
Wow.
Any like the SH word, anything. I think damn. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
say that yet. So yeah, it is something to get used to. And I have a potty mouth, so it's been
Yeah.
quite the adjustment.
You know, the sad thing is, my husband and I went and saw, we haven't been to it. We used to go to the movies every week, and the movies just are really bad right now. We haven't found a good one for a long time. So we went and saw, I love Jason Stratham. And so he was in this movie, Working Man, I think it's called, or something like that. So we went to it, and I didn't realize that Sylvester Stallone was the script writer and the producer. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And I like Sylvester Stallone. Rocky is Rocky, right? I mean, it is what it is. I love Tulsa King. It's like, good job. You know, he's a fun guy. I take it. He is who he is, right? You take him. But this was the stupidest movie. And every other word was the F word. And it was like, and I thought, that's what they don't understand. It's like, I can go see The Irishman with Robert De Niro, one of the best movies. I love that movie. You don't even hear the F word because it's in context. It's done realistically. You believe that this is the conversation that's going on. And there's a difference when vulgarity is put in just for the shock value and when it's part of the true story. And adults are able to decipher those two things and say, this is a story about a true happening. And this is just clickbait or whatever you want to call it. It's trying to be tough when you're not tough or whatever. And most adults can look at that and go, oh, that was stupid. That was silly. Nobody comes out and goes, well, I wasn't going to become a serial murderer, but now that I've seen that play, I guess that's who I'm going to be. I mean, that's where adults learn how to adult. And then, like you say, but the funniest part, this isn't funny. Funny is not the correct word. I used to work in the Portland Temple when we lived in Oregon. And there was a lady there, and she called me up and she said, could you give me a ride next week? And I said, yeah, will you need a ride back? And she said, no, I can get a ride back. So I said, okay. So I picked her up and went to the temple. Later, I found out that the reason why she had to get a ride was because her and her husband were both temple workers, but he had been arrested for molesting a child at church, and he was now in jail. And I thought, oh yeah, you're the one who, every week when we would go down to the cafeteria, you would say things like, we don't allow PG-13 movies in our home. We don't watch any movies like that. And when I said to her one time, I just read this book by Deepak Chopra. It was so good. Oh, you need to be careful what you're reading. I mean, you don't want to read things that haven't been, authorized or and I thought, yeah, even after her husband is serving jail time, she's saying things like she's continuing to work in the temple. He's in jail. She's continuing to work in the temple. And she's saying things like, I wonder if we'll ever be able to do that. And I'm like, be able to do what? She goes, be like a temple president and his wife. And I'm like,
What?
Your husband is in jail for molesting a child. And you're just like, what? And so as she believes his side of the story. She thinks he's innocent, but that's how clueless she is. That's what the danger of infantilizing adults, that's the danger where they don't even click to see their own reality.
It's because they are not taught critical thinking. They cannot think critically. They cannot think for themselves. They're just spoon feed me, church, tell me what to do. But inside they have all of these feelings and emotions. And the song that I hate like more than any is the song you learn in primary. If you chance to meet a frown, do not let it stay. Just
Yeah.
shove your feelings down, 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 because they're not important. It's
Yeah.
all about just taking all of those emotions that are natural human emotions, like
Yeah.
anger, like lust, like desire, and just stuffing them down. But until this point where you can't anymore, they build,
Yeah.
they build, they build, they build, and then you have to release them somehow. And often it's in a really negative way, like where
Yeah.
there is assault.
Yeah.
There's sexual assault on a minor or on
Exactly.
like a child or another woman, like because they've not been taught how to think critically, how
Yeah.
to release those emotions in a healthy way. So much
Well,
shame
even
causes this
little things that like, my husband calls me up and he says, would it be okay? Elders Quorum presidency wants to come over to the house. And I'm like, absolutely. I said, that would be fun. Please have them come over, which makes him nervous when I say that.
problem.
So these, two old guys come over and the silly, immature things they'll say. Like this guy says, we used to live in California and there's a very high Sikh community down in the area where we lived. And they sold some property to the Mormon church. And they said to me, they told us, we couldn't think of anybody we'd rather sell our land to than the Mormon church. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't believe that story. And why do you need to tell yourself that? Why do you have to be the chosen people to buy land from the Sikhs who probably were very happy that the Mormon church paid probably more money than anybody else was bidding for some land, but you had to make it out to be, we're the best. They sold it to us because we're the best. Why do you have to be the best? And why is that? That's always part of the story. Well, they said those are the nicest people we knew. And it's like, that's so sad. Close this out by telling everybody, when do you podcast at the same time, same place, same station? And I'll put a link to your podcast. So tell everybody where they can find you. And if you do, like Kate, you've also got your TikTok. And Erika, are
And
you doing
Erica's
that
up and
too?
Oh yeah,
Erica's up and coming too.
I
Okay.
started a TikTok as well. It's
Okay.
mine is Americana, so it's my name, which is Erica in the middle. So it's I'm Erica N-A. I am ERIKA NA. Americana.
Okay.
And I just started, and it's mostly in service to the podcast. I share some of my experiences as a Nevermo and how sort of traumatic and challenging that was working in Mormon Central. So,
Mm.
but mine is much, much smaller. I just started it a few
Okay.
months ago.
And Kate, where can people find you?
They can find me on TikTok mostly. It's under Midlife Exmo, and that's my major platform. But trying to go out to YouTube and different platforms, but mostly in TikTok right now.
Okay.
And our podcast, which is an Exmo and a Nevermo walk into a bar, we release episodes every Tuesday. We just released our 10th last week.
Yeah,
Right? So our 11th will be released tomorrow. And we'd be happy
Great.
to anyone. You can find us anywhere you find your podcast, like Apple Podcasts,
Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get your podcasts. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
there.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't get out with the girls as much as I used to in the old days, Like you, Kate, I had people that were supposedly my best friends that I hung out with for years and years, and my kids babysat for their kids and the whole bit. And the minute I left the church, gone.
Right.
And there's still a few of them that hang on here, but one of them, the one that was supposed to be my bestest friend, and I knew she wasn't really a good friend because she, when you tell your best friend something and then you go out with where there's three of you and the third person goes, hey, well, so-and-so was saying that you don't like, and I'm like,
oh, gross.
Okay. So I knew she wasn't really that good of a friend, but when she found out that I left the church, she actually texted my husband and said, I'm so sorry. I don't know how you can put up with her.
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
you are going to have to
awful.
come on our
Yes.
podcast because we
Yes.
need to hear your whole story. We need to
Yeah.
do this in reverse
I
and
would
hear
love
your
that.
whole story.
Yeah,
That would be
I would love that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny. My husband loves Daybreak. We have a condo in Draper that we go to in the summer, and he kind of wants a garage. So he keeps trying to talk me into a house. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And he's like, he'll drive around Daybreak. And, do you like that one? Do you like that one? And I'm like, no, because I like my little condo and I don't want to have a house. So no. Have you run into the housewife of Salt Lake, Whitney?
No.
Whitney's out in Daybreak somewhere.
I wouldn't know her if I saw her. I'm not a super reality TV person.
Okay.
No, we did hear from a bar. We
Yeah.
won't say which one. The bar said that the husbands of their housewives go and hang out.
Oh yeah.
at the bar.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have
Because
to.
they're good Mormons.
You'll have to watch. I used to be an avid. I watched all of them. New York, OC, Beverly Hills. I used to watch all of them. But all the women that I watched have all aged out now, and they brought in all these new little girls. And I can't get into their stories, so I don't watch it. I watch the one in Salt Lake just because there's a connection there.
Yeah.
And I like Heather. She's hilarious. She's the
Okay.
best. But yeah, so Whitney is the one that lives in Daybreak now. And so it's funny when you know the area and she'll show the outside of her house. And I'm like, oh, I know right where that is,
I'll have to check it out and see
Yeah.
and go do a little because it's pretty walkable. There's a new whole section of Daybreak, but my guess is the older section is where we are, and I like it better. But so I'll have to go do the walk over there.
Yeah.
And check out
Whitney's
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. See if do like Housewives of Salt Lake City, Whitney's daughter's birthday party or something like that. I think it shows she's doing some painting outside in her yard, and you can really see that it's like,
I'll
oh,
check
you're
it
in
out.
Daybreak.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to do that.
Thanks
figure
for
it out.
joining me today, ladies. And it was just a pleasure. And when I get up to Utah, we will definitely be getting together, I'm afraid. So,
Absolutely.
That would be amazing.
would love to
Please,
have you
let's
on.
do that. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
yeah, that would be so fun. So, all right. Thanks so much.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great week. Okay.
You too.
Bye-bye. Oh my gosh. I miss girl clubs. I miss lunch with the girls. And, it's a combination of leaving the church, which was a big part of your kind of built-in friends, and then also retiring and moving to a new location. And, once you I've watched a lot of YouTubes for women and men that age when they've retired, they've lost their kind of the people that they used to hang with, or those of you that have children, a lot of your friendships are based around your children and their activities. And so once everybody, the children grow up and go away and your husband retires and you move to a new location, and finding adult friends is hard. It's really hard. So that was really fun talking with Erika and Kate. And I will link all of their connections in the description. So thanks for joining me today. And remember, I don't want your money. Please don't send me any money. There's no way you can send me money. But what I do want is your subscription, your likes, and your shares. So that's the thing that's important. Let's get this word out. Let's spread the word. Let's help more women become visible and let them know that there are friends out there. They do have friends out there, and we want to be one of them. So thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.
There's a voice that won't be still, breaking silence, bending will, Renee's mic is on, she's live. Truth and fire, she